Hello, viewers, and welcome to the Team VVV podcast. As ever, I'm Alan, and I'm joined today by Kevin.
Hello.
Hello, Kevin. And as ever, we're going to talk about the recent racing gaming news over the last week or so that's been doing the rounds. We're going to kick off with this week, of course, the big news that F1 2019 is to be released on the 28th of June. It's great that Codemasters have managed to bring it forward. It's a nice surprise. But also, I think what's interesting in the press release is that several key milestones. There is what looks like a Formula 2 car in there, which could add a lot to the racing, but also in terms of spec racing, but also in terms of a career mode that actually develops you as a driver. Also, what's interesting is they've mentioned that the game's been in development for 2 years, essentially being developed parallel to what the other games they've been putting out, which is surprisingly impressive given the steps forward there were in F1 2018. So I should imagine they've been quite stretched to an extent developing both games. But also in this version as well, we have essentially, again, a spec F1 car designed by or input by sort of the rules of Pat Simmons and Ross Brawn in terms of meeting those regulations, if you like, that then people can paint their own skins on there. So when they go online, they can have their own liveries on the car and show off their own esport teams and stuff like that, rather than painting a Mercedes or Ferrari. I'm sure they wouldn't be happy seeing their cars painted in different colors. Now they can actually paint the colors of their actual esport team, which could be great for esports sort of casters out there in terms of making accurate coverage. So we're expecting improvements in esports, I guess, in terms of not only being able to paint your cars. I assume there's going to be more esport tools in the game to be able to stream and camera options and stuff like that. And all of that, of course, if it's in the game, can help them with more professional coverage of the actual F1 esports. So I'm sure the F1 esports are sort of influenced things in the online mode, and so they want those camera angles to be as realistic as possible and increase the amount of camera angles they have and really to build upon that. So looking really good, Kevin. I've done all the talking on F1 on this one, but I look forward to see what Codemasters have got in store. In a way, though, Kevin, it's kind of like they're working towards a service model in a way. I mean, the closer we get, it does feel to me like a service model would suit F1 better at this stage. I suppose it is. We've always said it, haven't we? It's just the cost of the license, which is always something that sort of means that you have to make an annual release. Yeah, June,
isn't it? Late June rather than sort of the traditional sort of August slot that it normally has. So that's interesting, I thought.
It's positive to bring it forward. I mean, the earlier in the season, they've always wanted to bring it out early. I mean, when it first was released in September, and then they brought it to sort of late August. But now they've got it pretty close in terms of, it's not just designing the cars and stuff like that, it's getting it all signed off by various sponsors and all the paperwork and relaying that paperwork to FOM or Liberty Media and getting it all back. And there's a lot of licensing and brand licensing issues and stuff like that, as well as just bringing all the elements together in a limited development time of 1 year development. So this extra development time could see a considerable improvement. So hopefully we'll get access to a preview build at some point, and then we can put it through its paces. I'm keen to see development of the graphics, but also the physics again. I'm keen to see how if there is Formula 2 car in there, how it handles. There's always improvements being made. I mean, a lot of the complaints on F1 2018 came from the online modes and various bugs. And so I think this year there is going to be a bit more of a microscope on them to fix some of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've sort of wanted for a while now, a sort of feeder series to the main F1 portion. So this is really exciting news for F1 fans. It's something we've been asking for many, many years from Codemasters, and it looks like finally we're going to get our Formula 2 cars, which will just add so much to the career, won't it, in terms of, like you say, progression, developing the driver and such. So you can sort of, especially if you're new to the series, you can get onto these tracks in a car that's not so rapid, and you could be able to learn the circuits perhaps a little bit quicker than you would otherwise. So it's a nice introduction. It really beefs out the career mode, if indeed it is in this game, fully fledged season, which we're kind of hoping it will be. It just adds so much to F1 2019. It really sort of set it aside from the last sort of few games as being a little bit more beefy in terms of overall package.
Yeah, I think also it shows that the relationship between Codemasters and Liberty Media, they're learning what a game needs to make a better game. It's not just about making a Formula One game. It's about making a Formula One game that appeals to a lot of people. So you've got to make it approachable. You've got to develop I guess you could say, a sort of difficulty curve, if you like, because Formula One is hard. Formula One is a top motorsport. It's hard for a lot of people to play, and we want to get more people interested and involved. So I think it can only be a positive step forward. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Actually, I feel quite excited to see this year's F1 game. You know, all these new drivers, you know, what the abilities are going to be of the cars and the modes they're going to have in there. You know, it sounds exciting. And the new F1 Esport Series. And that takes me on to the F1 Esport Series. I mentioned a bit of this in the trailer video, but big expansion on the F1 Esport Series this year, doubling the prize pot for the teams to, was it $500,000? So it's an increase for the teams. I mean, there's been kudos for the teams, but now there's more. There's there's more to play for in that sense. And there's going to be, I think it says here, about 4 televised shows rather than just 3. I think they really need to extend the races. I would like to see more 50% races. I think 50% races add more in terms of required consistency and strategy.
It's a trade-off, though, isn't it? You got to get people involved watching this. So it's 50% too long. That's the question, isn't it? I think
if you had, it's a bit of a combination. They have short races and long races, like a sort of a sprint race and an endurance race comparatively. I think it works. I think. Would
you have a long race in the live show though?
We had one last year to finish off at Abu Dhabi, and it was really good. It was an excellent race, and it really came together at the end. So I think with all races, you get a longer lull period in the centre where some guys are perhaps staying out on a tyre strategy. Some people are pitting twice. And it's not till sort of the final 5 laps where all these strategies come together, where you see who's got the best tyres, and it's a bit of mayhem. But at the same time, for racing fans, they're just enjoying it as a Formula One race. I mean, every year now, the graphics are going to improve. The look and feel of it's going to feel more like the real sport. It's going to be like watching a real Formula One race. So I think I was very entertained by it. And I think that if they can get that across to people, got to care more about the players. That's the only problem. I mean, they're talking about starting it earlier in the year as well. But you've got to get to know the players more, because I said to various people last year, it's no good having an esports series where you pick it up in October and you drop it in November and that's it for a year. That's too long. People forget about all the drivers. They need more consistent coverage all year round. I mean, yes, you can mention a few of the drivers right now, but and they're going to mention obviously a pro draft again this year, which I went to last year. So I'd never been to a pro draft before, and that's going to be interesting, because are they going to keep certain drivers? Do all the drivers need to enter into the pro draft? Seems a bit strange. I'm surely not. Surely, Mercedes are going to be quite happy. Their drivers finished very highly last year. They won't want to go to a pro draft and give their drivers away. They're going to be happy with what they've got. So surely we'll end up in a situation where there's less seats available for new drivers to step into. Or maybe each team will be forced to give away one driver into the pot. That's going to be something which could be interesting. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what the plan is. I mean, I don't see how that works in motorsport in that way. So we'll wait and see. But F1 Esports taking a step forward, F1 taking a step forward. All good for Codemasters this year on that front. Something that's not taking a step forward is Driveclub, which is being pulled from the PlayStation Store in 31st of August. Is that 2020 or 2019?
2019. Yeah.
So yeah, it's had a decent run. I enjoyed Driveclub for what it was. I think we've agreed that it's got phenomenal graphics. The rain effects are unsurpassed. It developed. The problem with Driveclub is it had a bad rep when it was first released, because the initial graphics weren't that great, and in the early builds, and it had a lot of problems on release. And then, well, then there was sort of, improvements all around the houses, really. It turned into a really good game after sort of 6-7 months after it was released. And it just got better and better with all the improvements being made to it. I mean, it wasn't the most detailed physics in the world. It was quite limited in many respects. But the feeling of driving, being in the car, was really nicely done. And it's sort of a shame now, what in this digital era now, that games can be just switched off. And that's that. You can't play it. You'll never be able to play Driveclub as it's meant to be played ever again. That's it. And that's the sad part of the digital era. You can put in a physical game and play it as it was. But as soon as they switch off the core online functionality of these online games, you lose that. And I don't know what that means for, I don't know what that means for, the physical copies, whether they'll still work okay or whether they just won't function because it will say can't connect, won't function at all, even the one player. I don't know what that means, but it's a bit of a shame, isn't it, in that way?
Yeah, it's a shame that they have to shut it down when the console is still the current gen, rather than it being like a last gen. It would soften the blow. The fact that we haven't had the new consoles yet, and yet this game, by the time August comes around, we may not even have the console announced. I mean, who knows? But it is a shame. But it goes to show how old the current gen consoles are. I guess the fact that these games are closing already. I mean, when did it come out? 2014. So it's almost 5 years by the time it does close down the servers. So these consoles are getting quite long in the tooth now, aren't they? We need a refresh now. I think it's time.
I mean, there's a part of me that would love to have seen sort of, we're talking about PS5 and we're saying, well, we're going to see on PS5. Well, I suppose we would like to see PS4 games with an upgrade option to run at 4K 60.
Yes, please.
All your PS4 games. Just imagine Driveclub running at 4K 60.
Yeah.
I mean, mind-boggling. Wouldn't that be nice? But I just never understood Sony's decision to get rid of Evolution, really. When you look at what Evolution have done for Sony over the years, there's some great titles there. It all seems like lunacy to me. And to just get rid of an IP like this that could have developed into the new Project Gotham Racing. It had all the potential there to do that. And then they just got rid of it and not replaced it with anything. All you've got is GT Sport, which is a completely different market. So I just can't see why you wouldn't say, right, let's make Driveclub 2, pay for the licenses again of the relevant licenses, release Driveclub 2, and which includes all the content of the original game upgraded plus a few new bits and pieces. People would be happy with that, but they haven't done that, and that's it really. So it's going to be cheerio Driveclub. So good to see the positive response from gamers. I did a little video tweet about it. It's done quite well on Twitter. But at the same time, I mentioned in the tweet, when I was making Driveclub videos 4-5 years ago, whatever, nobody was watching them. Nobody cared. And it's all right. People now saying, oh, it's a shame it's going. Well, maybe people should have been a bit more interested in it, a few years ago. But they weren't. They were interested in other games that were marketed to them more successfully. And that's the way it works. We often say on this channel about try this game out, but people, it's like when I stream games quite often, you're sort of forced to stream the games people want to see. Gran Turismo, Forza Motorsport, whatever, Need for Speed, that's what's marketed to people. If you do something outside of that, you get no viewers. Your viewers literally just vanish because they're like, oh, it's like I did a bit of I don't know, Grid Autosport the other day, which wasn't a bad game at all, a lot of fun to play. But as soon as I went from Gran Turismo to Grid Autosport, everybody stopped watching. And it was like that with Driveclub years ago. As soon as you went to Driveclub, nobody would watch, not interested. So, I mean, it's going, but, there wasn't the support for it anyway.
Also worth noting, it's not just Driveclub that's being removed from the PlayStation Store. It's also Driveclub Bikes and the Driveclub VR as well. So if you don't own any of those free, it's worth grabbing them before August, because Driveclub Bikes is an awful lot of fun. It's supposed to be a car game, like a bikes add-on, but it was such fun that it was one of our best bike games this generation. And Driveclub VR, it has its problems with resolution and whatnot, but still it's worth experiencing in VR just to give you an idea of what the future could be like, because like we said, Driveclub does a wonderful it's great at putting you in those cars, in those detailed
Mm.
cockpit cars, and it makes you feel like you know what it'd be like to drive these cars for real in terms of sitting in the cars, at least anyway. So
Yeah.
in the VR you get that as well. So it's quite well done, although it does have its shortcomings with the resolution in general. But you know, it's still
I think
worth
I
getting
said
on.
that. I think we had the Driveclub VR video, and I think it's brilliant in car. You know, the way you were looking around the car, you felt the car around you. The racing was
Yeah.
great. Like you say, the only thing was the resolution. It felt like you were wearing smeary glasses. I mean, it just made it difficult at times to
Yeah.
play and
It's
see where you were going.
understandable though, in a sense, because Driveclub is 30 frames, and suddenly you've got to get, you know, much more frames to run in VR. So you're getting rid of detail, and you know, it all just sort of it wasn't built with VR in mind. You know, it wasn't future proof in that sense. It was just Driveclub was its own thing, and it's just been sort of hacked about to try and get it to work in VR. But you know, it is what it is. But still, it's worth picking up, I think, just for the sort of experience to give you an idea of what the future could be like in VR. Because with games such as Gran Turismo Sport, the VR portion is still very limited, whereas with Driveclub you can get onto any track, drive any car. So in that sense, you're getting a full experience despite these sort of the low resolution at times. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a game that shows the potential. Like you say, it's a shame. You know, I mean, Evolution were already gone before PlayStation VR was released, so there wasn't any time to give any upgrades or anything else, even sort of post-release, which is a bit of a shame. But that's Driveclub news. Moving on, we've got some new screenshots for Dangerous Driving. Kevin, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so there was a bit of a sort of screenshot blowout recently for Dangerous Driving, a game we don't know an awful lot about, but it is going to release next week, actually, April 9 for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. And it sort of it's come from the former Criterion founders Alex Ward and Fiona Sperry. So they created the Burnout series, of course. So it is very much a sort of Burnout successor in a way, I guess. And the sort of screenshots showcase the various sort of damage elements, and you got loads of sparks and explosions and all that good stuff. It does still feel a little bit on the basic side, the game, but of course, as the company develops, you know, you can expect more and more investment going into their products. I mean, we've already seen it with their first products. They've sort of built towards dangerous driving. You know, this was the original goal, I guess, but they've had to obviously build towards that to raise the money and resources to fund such a project as this. But it's shaping up well, I think. It was delayed recently, actually. They were increasing the speed, apparently, of the cars, making the gameplay much quicker. And it almost looks too quick in places on the trailer. But, you know, it's just one to look out for. If you're a fan of Burnout series, this could sort of scratch that itch, because we haven't had a Burnout sort of title for many years now. So they've got a range of race modes and stuff going on. And there's got some online stuff as well coming, I think. I think that's within the first month of the release as well, so you might have to wait a little while for the online component. But you know, they've got some interesting things there, some takedown races and such, and it's just one to look out for, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, it's so fast you're going to crash because you just can't see where you're going. That's my fear about it. I mean, I saw in the trailer one crash where I thought, well, I didn't even see that, and so I'm driving along. Oh, crashed! I didn't see it. Oh,
Yeah,
crashed! I didn't
it's
see
very
it.
quick. Yeah,
There's no. It's not like, oh, that was skillful. You know, it was like, I'm just going to be driving and crash. That's my fear about it. It's funny, when you look at the different Burnout games, there is a different philosophy to them. Burnout 1, I liked a lot, because in Burnout 1, you couldn't crash into other cars at all. The idea was you dodged everything. And you felt like a badass when you really you needed to get into getaway driver mode. There was full on traffic, dodging the traffic. Wow. As soon as they brought in traffic checking and bumping into things, it changed the game a lot. Burnout 3 I thought was amazing as well for different reasons. But I don't know, this game's kind of somewhere in the middle. I'm not sold on it yet. I think let's go faster and faster and faster till we can't see anymore and crash. I don't know, that doesn't. I'm sure there's a few aliens that can see it like a fly, and everything's in slow motion to them. But to the rest of us, I don't know.
I know what you're saying. It's quite worrying in the sense that they had a product here, and maybe they didn't quite believe they had the fun element, perhaps, and they had to increase the speed to maybe increase the fun. Maybe it wasn't quite giving people the wows that it should have done. Maybe that's, I don't know, it almost seems like a knee-jerk reaction possibly to sort of speed up the action at the 11th hour. Maybe it's not entertaining enough, perhaps, or...
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, it depends who's testing the games and giving them feedback, really. You know, you've got to make sure when you're testing games, you test games with people outside of the development bubble, outside of your friends who just play it, but also people who are not sort of, you know, like you say, amazed at playing a game before anyone else. You know, when I walk into a room, it's like, here's a new game. Fine, it's a new game. I'm not excited by that in that sense. I'm here to see it and look at it. You know, how exciting the game is. I look at it objectively. It is what it is.
You've got to break it down.
And if you've not got that around you when you're making a game, and you've got everyone telling you it's brilliant, then you're going to end up with something that's not that great. And that's what often people say to me, like you say, it brings me back to the whole, Alan, you're really critical about certain games like Forza or something. You know, you hate that game. No, I don't hate that game. I just want it to be better. And if you all go around saying this game's perfect, then it's never going to get any better. You've got to say what's wrong with it to get it improved. So in that sense, it looks okay. I'm not sold on it. You know, we'll see what the gameplay's like. If we get hands on, then I'll know more. What's happening with Crash Nitro fueled bundles, Kevin?
Yeah, so it came to light recently that they're going to bundle more sort of classic Crash Bandicoot carts content. So you had the original 1999 Crash Team Racing. Of course, this is the remaster, all Nitro fueled. And they're also going to bundle in some Crash Nitro kart content from 2003. So it's almost going to be Crash Team Racing Nitro fueled is going to be almost like a compilation now of two classic Crash kart racing games now, so which is interesting because, you know, there seems to be taking on a lot with the 99 reboot or remaster, but they're adding in 2003 content as well, so it's very much a surprising development. There are some exclusive content as well for PlayStation owners. They showcased actually there's 3 of the classic characters there, Crash, Coco, and the other guy, I can't remember his name now, but and they showed him in low poly form. And what they did is they stripped back the texture quality and they reduced the polygon count to give it this sort of retro PS1 flavor, albeit sort of surrounded by the latest HD visual environments. But it does look good. It does sort of give you that throwback to the sort of PlayStation 1 days. So it is a nice little touch, and it's just shaping up to be potentially a really big package game now, which I wasn't necessarily expecting off the bat. So it seems that they're adding quite a lot into this game. It's available in June, of course, so we don't have much longer to wait. And of course, we've got a Sonic game as well to look forward to as well this summer. So it's an interesting time, isn't it, to have a Crash game and a Sonic game, because we haven't had either for quite some time now, particularly the Crash racing we haven't had for such a long time now. So it's good to see these two sort of juggernauts, these sort of mascots come back with a bang this summer. So I'm really looking forward to these two games and just seeing how they sort of mix in with today's racing game market as well. So, but yeah, certainly Crash Team Racing Nitro Fuel looks like one to look out for with all this content. So yeah, certainly good fan service here for PlayStation 1 players.
Yeah, well, either way, I think it's nice to see HD updates like that, and shows what a radical difference it makes. Looks fantastic.
And do you know what I like about this remaster is the fact that there's 2 generations gap, not 1 generation. Often you'll see a remaster of a last gen game, like an Assassin's Creed, for example, and it's just not that much different. And you feel, well, was it worth it? When there's 2 generation leap, then it's worth it, because you really do see the technology, how it's moved on. And you know, I'm very much a fan of having a 2 generation gap rather than just a single.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of games on the PS1 they could remaster. You know, we've said it many times. It'd be great to see some of those remastered. Now we're going to the PS5 in a way. I almost want to wait now until next gen now, because we're so towards the end of this gen. I think it's exciting when you go to a new gen. And in a way, there's a part of me that says, don't do any more remasters now. I'll save it now, because this gen's old now. It's near the end of the road.
Yeah, I mean, one criticism I will have.
In the next 2 years, you're going to have remasters on PS5.
The problem is with the PlayStation 4 era, there was too many remakes and remasters early on, wasn't there? And it became saturated with these sort of remasters, and I don't know, there was too much in a short space of time for me. So I think this gen has taken a good sort of 2, 3, maybe even 4 years to really get into its stride. I just hope we don't see that with next gen. I'm all for remasters, but when there's too many in such a short space of time, it leaves you thinking, well, maybe I should have held off buying a PS4, for a couple of years until it really got into its stride. So I just feel that I don't want them to repeat that same process where there's just too much early on.
I mean, I know what you mean. It's just like you say, we're end of this gen, but either way, looks fantastic. So let's see what other news we've got. Quick mention, obviously, Fernando Alonso has joined the Motorsport Network esports division, founds a new esport team. Interesting, he's made an investment there. It'd be interesting to see where that's going in the future. There's a lot of movement in esports at the moment. Everybody's putting money into it, but nobody really knows where they're getting the money out. Interesting times. This is only the beginning for esports at the moment. It's only starting now, but it will be interesting to see how things change over the next 5 years, and they will change massively. Teams will go out of business, competitions will go out of business, games will fail, competitions will fail. It's like everybody caring about Formula One competition, and then Formula One created their own competition. Nobody cares about the stuff that was there before. It's the same as that now. When real car companies and real Formula One drivers make brands, all those little teams and esport teams that are out there right now, they'll all get torn apart, and there'll be no more because the big brands will come in and take all their top players. So it's all going to change. TT Isle of Man was shown on the Switch coming in May. Looking quite good at this stage, actually. Obviously really difficult. I don't know what changes have been made to the game since the console version. Haven't seen anything of it yet, but that's something we'll come back to in the future. Hopefully a bit of coverage on the channel. Elsewhere, Google had their announcement of the new Stadia game streaming platform in 2019. So game streaming is not new. It's been around.
No.
OnLive tested it about, I don't know, back in 2011.
Yeah.
Great tech. Playing a strategy game, amazing. Okay. As soon as you put on a racing game, doesn't work at all, because you got to turn your steering wheel. That's got to communicate with the device, which communicates with your phone line, which communicates with their computer, which communicates with what it's doing, which comes back again, which communicates to your TV.
Lag.
Lag. Not possible. So Stadia, and they put out all this nonsense of what it can do in terms of stats. Well, let's just see it in the real world. I'm sure for average gamers playing, people who play Facebook games or something, some game on the farm or something like that, it's going to be fine. But as for high-speed action games and FPS, I can't see it. But it's definitely a good potential platform for places where people can't afford consoles or get into it. And it is impressive tech, and it is the future. It is the future, make no doubt about it. 15, 20, 30 years when we all have 150 meg connections minimum with, 100 meg upload, anything's possible. Latency will be almost zero once they rebuild the network. That could take 50 years in the UK alone. It amazes me in a way that our infrastructure is so poor in the UK in particular. There are other countries with far bigger connections, and you would think that, and we were talking about this conversation 15, 16 years ago, I remember. And back then we had half meg connections and 1 meg. And we were hearing like in Japan, they had 90 meg and all this sort of stuff. And that was back then. And here we are in the UK, and it's very slow getting infrastructure in place. You think, how difficult can it be? Seems like there's a lot of red tape, and Google need that to Sony and Xbox no doubt will go the same way when that technology catches up. But I can't see any change to us moving away from consoles anytime soon. What are your thoughts on it, Kevin?
Yeah, like you say, they've got to have the infrastructure in place to run something like this successfully across the board, and we're not quite sold on it yet. Perhaps, like you say, in the future, but maybe it's a little bit too soon. Maybe they don't have everything in place, but we'll see how it goes. It certainly is a step towards the future, isn't it, with Google on board with their funding and whatever. So
yeah, they've got money. I mean, don't get me wrong, they will get millions of people to sign up for it. And if it's free, we'll probably all sign up for it and have a go on it at some point. It's probably a handy thing to have on your laptop if they've got some simple games. So they're bound to do well as a platform. But I think for your hardcore gamers, I think we're going to be using consoles for quite a few years yet. And I think that's sort of much of the core news this week. Any news that sort of stood out? Actually, one of the other things I was just going to mention is obviously by the time this video will go out, maybe I'll have done a race with the new Super Formula cars. I'm going to talk a bit about that on there. But Super Formula, really nice addition to Gran Turismo Sport. It's a great Formula car. After Kazunori said to me a few years ago that they wouldn't be adding open wheel cars, that was my question to him. And when he said no, we won't, I was very disappointed. I think it was quite clear that, it was like, oh, and so here we are a few years later, we've got there, which is nice. But is there anything stood out for you, Kevin, in terms of the news over the past week?
I guess the announcement, or the sort of announcement, if you like, of Pacer. We had the announcement trailer.
Yes.
Pacer.
So the new name for Formula Fusion we see here. And yeah, we've seen a trailer now. By the time this podcast goes out, it's possible I would have played it. We haven't played it yet. We've just seen the trailer. It's a very unusual trailer, Kevin. I feel that the music and the vibe of the trailer doesn't work at all.
Agreed,
it's very sort of disjointed. It's almost like we cut some gameplay to some standard replay shots and put some words in there like defy people several times. Let's just defy them and put some irrelevant classical music to it. And that's the trailer. Quite irritating because the trailer's got so much potential style and cool. There's lots of very cool, smooth, refined graphics in there. It's very polished in terms of the look and feel. And as a Wipeout fan, I feel you can never have too many, sort of Wipeout style games. This looks much more refined and developed than Formula Fusion did a couple of years ago. I think Formula Fusion had real potential. It just wasn't finished at the time. This looks a lot more finished. We'll wait and see, really. I think gameplay is going to be the key thing. No, if the game plays well, it's going to be great. It's going to have a soundtrack from Cold Storage, who made the music for Wipeout many years ago. I'm a big fan. So potentially amazing music in this game. Hence disappointment of using, irrelevant music in the trailer when you've got Cold Storage on board. I just can't see the logic in that. I've got an idea as to why they've gone down that route. What do we think of the name, though? Pacer.
I don't like it personally. I mean, it doesn't scream futuristic racer for me. I don't know. It's one of the worst names I think I've heard for a long time, actually. I don't like it straight off the bat. That was my first reaction to it, and I don't think it's going to grow on me either, fortunately. So.
Pacer. I thought to myself, what does it mean? Formula Fusion I got that. It's like, Formula Fusion, you think of the engines and stuff like that, hybrid engine systems, electronic systems, nuclear fusion, whatever. Pace, when I see Pacer, I think of pacemaker. I don't know why. A pacer, is there someone setting the pace? Are you pacing? What is the way in which the word is used? And we talked a bit about gravel, Gravel was an interesting title for a game, but it suited it to an extent because a lot of the racing was on gravel.
Pacer doesn't tell me anything.
Dirt doesn't tell you anything, does it?
No, but it gives you an idea of what to expect, whereas Pacer doesn't say much at all, does it, really? Nor did that trailer either. So
no, it didn't tell you what's in. So we don't know what's in the game. We don't know how many cards. We don't know how many tracks. We don't know what modes or anything like that at this point. But
we know it's going to be enhanced, isn't it, on the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X?
It looks nice. It looks nice and polished. I look forward to playing it. I don't think the trailer has done it justice. I'll probably mention this on the trailer video, so apologies if I'm repeating myself. But it's nice to have more arcade racing genre action. Yeah. And I look forward to playing the final game, and getting a hands-on. So hopefully a hands-on video coming to the channel real soon. It's going to be at Rezzed this week as well, which is where I'll be when this video likely goes up. And trying it out. But, Pacer, look forward to that coming. What does it even say when it's coming out? I don't know if we know when it's coming out yet.
2019, I think, was the announcement.
2019. So, I would say that's going to come out in the next sort of 3 or 4 months, maybe. Yeah, I think 3 or 4 months. So, the last game came out in June, didn't it? The Formula Fusion. So I guess, where are we? Early April. It's not long now, is it, really, for a May release? Perhaps in June or July, maybe.
I don't think they're released in July. It's a sort of month that doesn't tend to get game releases.
No. We'll have to wait and see. Wait and
August,
see. Maybe
perhaps.
could be just after Gamescom, maybe. Who knows? Who knows? We're guessing. We have no idea. So you don't really want to. I mean, you've got to avoid so many releases now. That's the thing. You get
True,
empty.
yeah.
I mean, March. There's nothing coming out in March. It's pretty quiet. April. Nothing coming out in April. You've only got Dangerous Driving.
Yeah.
And then it's in the next few months. It's going to get packed again in the racing genre. There's loads of racing games coming out. So
Tricky
plus some that aren't announced yet. So yeah, it could be releasing in a busy window again, which is not ideal for them. But either way, interesting. But not. I don't feel it's a trailer that shows off the game well enough in that sense. But I do look forward to playing it and seeing what the final game is like. And I think that's about it for this week, Kevin. We've had to sort of rush through it this week.
Yeah.
And again, viewers, we haven't managed to take your questions this week because time has been limited. But I hope you've enjoyed all the WRC content. Hopefully some more on that coming on the channel. And as ever, all the latest racing gaming news is on the Team VVV website, teamvvv.com. So do jump over, say hello on the forum, say hello anywhere on the website. We're always there. And do like and subscribe to the channel as well. Supports what we do. But that's it from me for now and from Kevin. And there'll be more from us very soon.